All for attending and making time out of your day to continue to embrace Anishinaabe knowledge and learning. I remind everyone in a good, gentle way that, take as much as you can from here today. And as the late Adam Lusher Ba used to say, take what you want and leave what you want. And we could revisit again another time. So miigwech.
Miigwech, Angela. Thank you so much for those words and that welcoming. I do want to just have a disclaimer that we are recording. I just started the recording, so if you are on camera, then you will be recorded in this. We're recording all of these events. We're recording some work in the Sugar Bush as well, and we're building a new website right now, and all of that's going to be up there for people to view later on in the time of their choosing. But also it's going to be connected to language resources, other cultural resources, and strategies that you can use actually on the land, right? To actually put these messages into action, because action is absolutely what we need at this time. So I'm going to pass it over to Vivian for an introduction, and then we will begin our discussion and have Autumn and Stephanie introduce themselves. Miigwech.
Good afternoon, Shpekir, everyone. My name is Dr. Vivian Jimenez Estrada. So Vivian Jimenez Estrada Linubi, Paishimuleo, Palitinapita, Rabinal, Chani, Papawatinja, in Kowi, Maltiochiwe. So I am Maya Achi from the land of corn, Ishimuleo, and I'm extremely happy and honored for my relations here and my ancestors, and for being welcomed on this territory. Incredibly honored to share this space with all of you, and definitely with Stephanie and Autumn. So miigwech for that. I wanted to also say that it's really interesting that today in our one of our many sacred Mayan calendars, the solar Mayan calendar, which is called the Chalkir, it is the day number 7, Kawok. And number 7 is Wukub in Mayan, and Kawok actually means literally woman. But the energy of this day actually invites everybody to come together and to really bring life forward. And it's the day for taking care of everything and the well-being of the community. So miigwech for this very auspicious day, very connected to that. I'm not sure what else I could say at this point without taking up too much time. So I think I'm going to leave it there, and just to say that I'm just here to engage in the conversation and make some connections across different nations. So miigwech, Maltiosh, and I'll pass it back to you.
Maltiosh, Vivian, thank you so much. That's such a beautiful Quiche Maya language. I was so lucky to go down to Guatemala to learn a little bit. So it's always nice to hear other people speak it. So without further ado, I'd love for Adam and Stephanie, if you could please introduce yourselves. You are our stars today. We're so grateful for you to be here. I always love to see you guys. So please, welcome.
I'll introduce my name, Bojo, Nuijiwak, Indigenous Wawashkeshin Doden, Wiikwemkoong Don Jaba, Nijo Mede Kwendao.
Bonjour, Moscow Gijo Indigenous Media Doden, Wiikwemkoong Don Jaba. My name is Autumn Peltier. I'm 16 years old. I'm the Chief Water Commissioner for Anishinabek Nation.
Geez, now I'm wondering if our introduction should have been a little bit faster.
Well, it does have a little message, an introductory message she'd like to begin with.
Yeah. Well, again, bonjour, Moscow Gijo Indigenous Media Doden, Wiikwemkoong Don Jaba. My name is Autumn Peltier. I'm the Chief Water Commissioner for Anishinabek Nation. I'm also an environmental and clean water advocate or activist. But this role as Chief Water Commissioner was passed down to me by my mentor, my inspiration, my great aunt Josephine Mandamin. Miigwech for inviting me to your territory to share my message with you. I would like to begin with why I'm on this journey. It's more of a path and work combined. It all began when we attended one particular water ceremony, as we attended many water ceremonies in the past. I learned at the age of 8 what a boil water advisory was. One day we attended a water ceremony on a First Nations reserve that was not too far from mine, Wiikwemkoong on Manitoulin Island. I went to the bathroom and there were signs along the walls saying boil water advisory, not for consumption. So I asked my mom what the signs meant, and she told me that the community can't drink their water here. I asked her why. She told me that the waters had been contaminated by old mining. It was sad to hear this, and as I looked around and saw children running around, I was saddened that the children didn't know what it was like to use clean water from the tap. I went home that night and spent time on Google researching what boil water advisories were. I learned that they mostly impacted the Indigenous communities in Canada. I learned that there were communities in Ontario for over 20 years that couldn't drink their water. I was very confused. I thought we had a pretty well-off country and we are rich in resources. You would hear of this happening in third world countries, but Canada is not a third world country. Then like a light bulb going on, I started to see our Indigenous world in a different light. Our people live in third world conditions. This is when I really started to understand how mistreated our people really are in Canada. A whole new learning opened up and a sad history, but at the same time, a resilient one. I learned about systemic racism and how it impacts our people. We survived colonization, the Indian Act, Indian residential schools, the wars overseas, loss of language, loss of culture, 60 scoop, missing and murdered Indigenous women, men, girls, and boys, and now our environment. It's been hundreds of years we've had to deal with these issues, and each generation lives another uphill battle. Each generation has a different battle. Our battle is trying to hold on to what we have and keep the languages and teachings alive. If we lose our fresh waters, then one day we may not have clean water, and we all need clean water to survive. My auntie Josephine answered a prophecy that was shared, and she began to make change. This is where my story begins. All this time I learned why we attended ceremonies and why my mom raised us girls around ceremony and understanding our roles as girls and women. It is why we spent a lot of our time traveling to ceremony and meeting aunties, uncles, and elders. When we lived in Thunder Bay, where I was born, we spent a lot of time with my great aunt Josephine and Uncle Andrew. It all started to make sense. I started to understand why my great auntie was doing what she was doing. Knowing this also scared me. It made me think that what will happen to water and the earth? I also thought she needed help because she wasn't getting any younger and her health started to deteriorate. My great auntie Josephine was always attending and doing ceremonies, and she started the Mother Earth Water Walks in 2003. She is known as the Water Walker. Since before I was born, she had been advocating and praying for our waters. So whenever I speak, I always acknowledge her and her work, as she was my role model and someone who inspired me. There are a few more other aunties and uncles that helped me as well, and I always think of them too. My mom was with her on her very first walk, and I was there on her very last walk. So many things I wish I could tell her about my journey since I've carried on this advocacy for clean water. When she had her last days, she asked to see us, and we drove there through a bad snowstorm. She told me that people will not like what I'm doing. People will try to stop me. She also said to never stop the work for the water, and she said never stop loving the water. So when I have days when I want to give up or someone doesn't like what I'm doing, I can hear her voice whispering to me to keep going. I have traveled all over the world now, and I know my travels are not done yet. Once it's safe to travel, we'll be back traveling and doing the advocacy. My auntie would always be so excited to see me when we would meet up at events where we both had a chance to speak. She would always ask me about my adventures. When I travel, I can feel her with me, and I feel like I get to take places she hasn't been before. So this is my introduction. I hope our visit today is a good one. Thank you.
And now I can begin my introduction. I always like to let her go first because she's Ogamakwe, and lots of times I always say I'm just her mom. And so when I go different places, sometimes people will say, "You're not just her mom." So it was quite the honor to be invited to share and speak alongside Autumn, because usually I'm in the background and I'm usually the one that's nervous. I'm usually the one like, oh, it's hot in here, and is everything okay? And she's just over there really calm, and she'll go, what's wrong with you? Oh, I'm nervous. And so I think lots of times it's because I'm usually the one that's doing all the planning and, making sure, everything goes as planned. And, she mentioned that about Auntie Josephine, but we were there before she passed, and it was like she waited for us, and because she kept asking, when are you coming? And I couldn't get off work, so I said I can't leave till Friday. And just so happens Friday ended up being a very big snowstorm and all the highways are closed. But I said, well, I got a truck. I'm gonna put it in 4x4 and I'm gonna make it there. And I made it there in 12 hours. And we slept, and it was the next day. And it was that day seeing her there, and hearing her. She went like this. So I went over there and put my ear to her lips, and she can barely talk. And she said, you're gonna have to be strong. And I really wanted to cry because it was sitting right there. But, when she said, you have to be strong. And then she said, this work that she's doing, it's gonna get hard and it's gonna get heavy. And she needs you to be her backbone. And she says, you have to protect her. And she says, keep her safe. And she said, don't ever let her stand alone. Always be by her side. And if you can't be there, have an auntie there with her. Have a grandmother by her side. And don't ever let her travel alone. And, that was the one thing she told me. And then she said, don't stop doing the work, no matter what. And that's what she said. People are not going to like what you're doing. People are always going to have something to say. And, there's always going to be someone out there that says you can do better, or they can do better work than you. And then she says, but who's out there doing the work? And so I listened to those words. And so my job is to, as her mom, as all mothers, I was thinking about what I could say. And, I was kind of emotional there this morning because I was really, spending time there. And, I do a lot of reflecting, and I take a lot of advice, and, I use my tobacco, and I sit there and, like what Andrew said, or, what was shared, what we share here is, what's going to come out. And so I was thinking about how the other day we had our first pouring rain, and it woke me up. It was the crash of lightning, the crash of thunder, and then pouring rain. And I just laid there, and I actually started crying. And it wasn't because I was sad. It was because I could hear Auntie's voice. And I always knew when it rained, when it snowed, she acknowledged those waters. She acknowledged those thunders, and she acknowledged those spirits. And she acknowledged life. And, I've been on this journey for a long time now. And I remember I got specific instructions because when I was young and on my healing journey, this May actually will be 27 years of sobriety for me. And when I made that decision to live a good life, it was the day, I was a young woman, and I was thinking about things and how that path that I was on was not a good path. and lots of not nice things happened, and I experienced life. And I always remembered the words of our elders and the teachings. And the reason why I picked up that bundle was because I didn't want to repeat a cycle. And my parents are residential school survivors, and we didn't have the easiest, I didn't have the easiest upbringing. And, you know, things were rough. For all of you who know what that's like, you know, you can relate to what I'm saying. A lot of things happened. And I remember being at a point where I didn't want to be a mother, you know, because I thought I was never going to be a good parent, or I'm just going to pass on or do something wrong. And so I didn't pursue that. And a couple of grandmothers sat down with me one day, and they asked me, when are you going to be a mom? I said, I don't know. I said, I actually felt like I wasn't worthy enough to, you know, be a mother, because listening to those creation stories, like we could sit here for hours and days just listening to those teachings. And my understanding of life is, you know, when we talk about those creation stories and you understand it, how Creator, he molded us into, you know, his reflection of, so we're a reflection, because he wanted to have us, he was a spirit that wanted to have a physical experience. And he said, there's no mistakes. And so, like, there's so much in our teachings that, you know, I've been learning, and I made it a pact to myself that when I'm a grandmother, I want my great grandchildren to know who they are. I want them to know what the teachings are. I want them to know what their roles as women and men are, boys and girls. Because if I don't do this, who's going to do it? And what kind of grandmother do I want to be? So it was a mission of mine to learn the language, learn the teachings, and learn those ways. And so that day, those grandmothers said, you know, when is it going to be your time? And I said, because being a woman, you know, when those rains came, I felt so humble and so honored to be born a woman. And the reason was because of those creation stories and how we were chosen to bring new life into this world. And anyone out there that's a mother, you know, when that water breaks and you go into labor and contractions, it's not an easy thing. And women are so strong. And when that new life comes, the first thing that happens is they bring that baby to you and they put it on your bare skin, skin to skin, on the left side of your chest, close to your heart. And that first moment that you see that baby, that's what new life feels like. And that's what the Creator felt when he created the earth, and he saw those seeds and those plants growing, when he saw those waters flowing, and he sees earth evolving. That's what he wanted to see. And we're in the vision, we're his thought, beyond the thought. And so bringing life into the world is a ceremony. It's not just something we do because, oh, I'm a woman, I gotta have kids, or oh my God, I had it. You know, it's you know, it's a ceremony. And those instruction I was given about bringing life into the world was, before you even go down that road, take care of your body. Be careful what you eat. Be careful who you're around. Be careful of the energy, and be careful of, don't be hanging out at the bingo hall or go to the bars or the casinos and where people are arguing and fighting, because you're carrying life. And so, she said, you're in a ceremony, and that baby is in that sacred water that brings life to this earth. So keep your waters calm. And at first I didn't understand what that meant, keep your waters calm. But it's like, when we feel trauma or any kind of negativity, it, we're carrying that baby in that water. They feel everything that we're feeling. And so I understood that. So don't be anywhere and just focus on bringing life into the world. So it's, you know, being a woman and bringing life into the world, it's a very serious thing. And so I took those instructions seriously, because the other teaching I got from my dad was, you have one chance to be this child's parent. You know, what are you going to do with that? And what kind of parent are you going to be? Because he says, you know, I did what I could, you know, living with what I was like lived. And, you know, he learned a lot. And I have so much respect for my dad, because he's one of my teachers, one of my knowledge keepers, and he's one of Autumn's knowledge keepers. And, you know, the knowledge that he carries, like, I have so much respect because I'm a part of him. And so when he said that, you know, what kind of parent do you want to be? And I took that serious, and I said, holy geez, this is a real serious thing, bringing life into the world. And so I thought about that. And those grandmothers said, sing to your baby, talk to your baby, you know, talk like that baby's already here, because that spirit can feel you, that spirit can hear you. And that's how sacred that life is. And so they're not even in a physical form yet. They're inside of us. And when that water breaks, that's when they're in physical form, that little being. It's like the creator being born all over again. So every time there's a baby born, we honor that new life, and we thank those women for all the things that they do to bring that life into the world. So, you know, just being a mom, I made sure I'm going to do this. I'm going to teach these girls. I have 3 daughters, and you can talk to each one of them, and they're going to know a lot of things. We could probably have a little conference, the 4 of us, and just focus on women's roles and responsibilities. And it's something that I don't broadcast that. I don't make that a big public thing. It's just because being an Anishinaabe, it's a way of life. It's what we do from day to day. It's not just being Anishinaabe on the weekend or being Anishinaabe after 4 p.m. Every day we're Anishinaabe, because we're spirits living a physical life. So everything we do, it's pretty sacred, because it's an honor to be here walking on this earth. We don't know how long we're going to be here. So what my dad always taught me was, make your day the best day that you can have, because you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And that was another teaching he brought me, like, just being a woman, you're the matriarch, you're the teacher, you're the one teaching these young ones, and it's our responsibility to make sure they have all they need when I'm gone. Like, I think about that. Like, I could be gone tomorrow, and is she gonna know what she needs to know and be able to do what she's gonna have to do when I'm gone? And we talk about those things, because it could happen. We don't wait for the last minute to, we have a plan. We talk about those things, and that's what's really important about our people. But that's part of being. I have a lot of responsibility as a mom and as a coordinator, I guess you can say, and as a protector, and all those kinds of things. So that's just a little bit there about me.
Miigwech, Stephanie, thank you so much. Jeez, I'm just welling up over here. Your words are so beautiful. Usually when we talk, we're joking and laughing, but that serious side is so amazing. And when you do share your teachings with me, I'm blown away. I wanted to share one little piece that about Grandma Josephine Mandamin, and I went fasting with her. And long story short, I didn't have my glasses, and I know we were talking about our glasses yesterday. And if I don't have mine on, like I'm really blind, right? And they said, oh, you don't need them when you're out there. And I'm like, okay, kind of do, because I can't see, 2 feet in front of me. Well, we were out there and a storm hit. Well, we were we were way up past Elliott Lake, under the guidance of Isaac Murdoch there. It was an incredible experience for me, and she taught me something without even really teaching me. It was so powerful, because when that storm hit, I tried to get into the trees and I was told, stay in this spot. But I was like, I don't want to get cold and wet. I did anyways, because it poured rain and stormed like cold all night. And all night I actually went right up to the edge of the water and I almost fell in. And that's a story in its own. But later that night, after we were all soaked and I didn't know where anybody was, I heard this young boy and he was wearing a t-shirt, and here I had a jacket and sweater. And he said, he's screaming my name, and there was a waterfall there. So like you could barely hear. And I came out of the bush finally. And he says, oh, Josephine, so worried about you. We're all so worried about you. Where were you? And I'm like, I tried to stay dry, even though that didn't happen. And he goes, well, grandmother's over there. Go sit with her. So I went and sat with her, and I said, and she carried such a presence, right? Like I always felt very humbled in her presence. So I can imagine her being a mentor, what that would have been like for your journey, Autumn, and for you too, Stephanie. I can kind of imagine, but the reverence there is incredible. And I said, oh, I prayed all night that the rains would stop. I offered my sema and I said, stop these winds, stop these rains. And she listened to me, and then she goes, all I prayed for was for you guys. And oh man, that moment I learned such a big lesson for my life, that what we have to do for each other, right? And here it was very selfish what I was doing in that bush, like praying for my, to be dry. And here she's praying for me. And I think her prayers is what stopped me from falling into that river, that cold river. And who knows what had happened then. Thank you so much for those words. And I know we have a little bit more time for a bit of a dialogue. And I want to ask you just a couple of questions. This time is when that ice is breaking up, and that maple water is, to me, this is what I've learned is the beginning of our new year and this moon cycle today. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the breaking up of the ice, the flowing of the maple water, and also the significance of the moon, this moon cycle.
Well, the last time I went to a really nice ceremony, it was with Auntie Ba, and it was in Thunder Bay, and it was on Lake Superior, and she would go into the water no matter what time of the year it was, but she referred to that as Bege Jirweben again, and what that meant was letting go and starting new. And so that's what that ceremony refers to, when that ice first breaks. And when I was a little girl, my grandmother, every spring, she'd be like, I'm back presents, and we'd go to the water, and it was always when the ice started to crack, and it would be funny because she'd wait over here, and then she'd get me with my bucket, go out there and go get her some water. And so I would walk out there and I'd be looking back at her, and she'd be like, Obajan, like, go. So I keep going, and where the ice was cracked, and I'd be looking down there, and I'd grab my water, and then I wanted to run because I was scared, but I remember going back, and I'd bring her water, and I asked her, later, why would you get me to go and get the water? Because she said it was because I was a little girl, and I was pure, and I was innocent, and that water, she would use it on her full moon ceremony because it was really sacred. And that's when our water is the purest. It's when the ice breaks because it's been frozen. And then when it melts, just like in the spring thaw, everything starts to melt. And then that new life comes. And so we talk about those maple trees in Optic, and how that tree has a spirit. And my dad taught me that that tree. And actually the spirit of all plant life is called Mitiknabe. And that's how he'd say, pray to that Mitiknabe, because Mitiknabe is the one, he's that spirit who, you know, he's the caretaker of all the plant life. And so and that first one that gives us life is that maple tree, Anatik. And so what he would tell me is that long ago when he was a little boy, when those trees would start to run, each person, they would set aside 2 liters of water, and they wouldn't drink it all at one time. It would be like a cup a day or 2 cups a day. And it was a natural cleanser. And that's shkeke that's medicine water. It's high in all kinds of nutrients that are good for our body. And so no matter where I am, I always try to go somewhere to find that water. Like we went out a couple of weeks ago to find it out in the country here, and I was able to find some sap water. And it was so funny because my other daughter laughed at me. She's like, "Oh, here we go again. It's like sap in the oatmeal, sap in the cream of wheat, sap in your tea, and sap in the smoothies." And I said, "Well, I'm just doing what my dad told me to do, you know, because this water is sacred." We also, what I would do is I would freeze it in little water bottles, and I would use that for our water ceremonies, because that was that sacred water. And especially for those full moon ceremonies, when that full moon comes, because, you know, that full moon, we're connected to it as women, because we have a monthly cycle, how we cleanse naturally. And there's different phases of that moon. And you even know when there's tides and the water goes out, everything's in relationship to that moon. And there's so much that, you know, those are just little bits and pieces, because that's all part of that creation story. Like there's like it's almost overwhelming amount of information, but it's like our Anishinaabe intelligence. The people we're so smart, and I feel like we're so smart is because we're part of this land and we're connected to this land. It's almost like a natural, it's an unseen knowing. And so when we talk about that ceremony in the spring, that letting go, whatever you were carrying all year, all those things you want to let go, you to make your tobacco tie in the yellow cloth, just like at a full moon ceremony, and you let it go. But the way Auntie said it, she'd say, throw it, just get rid of it. Don't hang on to that, and just let it go, and start brand new again. And that's what this significance is of the Shkibimatsuin, the new life. And that's the time that we're in right now, that time of renewal. We replenished ourselves, and now we're just, you know, we're letting all that stuff go. So those are natural things our people had to take care of ourselves and do our self-care. We just naturally did that, because if you're not taking care of yourself, what good are you going to be to anybody else? You know, those elders say that you can only take somebody as far as you've gone yourself. So I always say, well, you know, I wanna be a helper. I gotta be a good helper. I have to really do my work. You know, it's not just something I do once a month at an appointment. It's everyday work, you know, and you reach out to those elders. And, you know, I have to do that because I have this young woman here, and she's got a really huge role. And, you know, when Auntie Ba passed on, I got scared, because I was thinking, you know, who am I going to talk to? Because I would call her and she would say any time of the day, even middle of the night, I would call her when I had a dream. You know, I've shared quite a few water dreams with her, actually. And we did a ceremony at the All Nations ceremony in Tiny, Ontario a couple of years ago. And what we did there was, that was my dream, how we all came together, and how all those women, there was like over 200 women there in this huge snowstorm. And it was women from all over. They weren't just Anishinaabe Kwe, it was everybody, because we need everybody to do this. It's all of our water. This is our planet and we have to work together. So, you know, I got scared because she's not there anymore. And then just in December, my mom passed away. She was my other mentor. And I was like, you know, now, you know, we think about those generations and I'm there now. You know, these girls are, you know, going to need someone to guide them and the young women. And so I make sure that I attend ceremony. I talk to the aunties and the uncles and the grandmothers, and I make sure I have a big circle. So I have a lot of different, you know, views and helpers, because she says you're going to have to be able to stand strong. So, you know, when we talk about that big webbing again, that's how my daddy would say that. That's that letting go. That's really important. You don't carry stuff, you move forward, because, you know, even in that creation story, when Creator created those 4 races of man, everybody left because they were so eager to go have that physical experience. But in Anishinaabe looked back and he didn't want to leave Creator's side. So we think about that, how we spent the most time with him and we got those instructions from Creator. You know, there's just so much there. And so you have to really, you know, it's almost like an everyday thing, you know, learning and taking care of yourself, because, you know, we have these young people coming behind us. And now it's my real responsibility to make sure she gets those teachings and those instructions before she takes off on me on her own.
Wow, that's so powerful. I've been to Castaway before, you know, and we lined the river side with our tobacco ties, and you know, there's stones too, those black stones that we use to that we had allowed what we carried, that was, you know, that we no longer wanted to carry with us, to be in that bundle. So when we're throwing away, we're throwing everything so we can be rejuvenated. And it is so powerful, because I was told too, you throw that and you throw it and you don't look back. You don't look to see where it goes in the river. You let that go. And Boujou. um, so the other thing too was that recently this archaeologist just gave us this document, and in it, it talked about when we were tapping our trees in our traditional territories up here, up near Wawa. We went up there, and we prayed, we offered tobacco. We went right in, and there was all these old maples, and he said before we would almost exclusively eat maple syrup during this moon cycle. When we were tapping those trees, it wasn't like we were cooking corn, and you know, we had run out mostly at this time of some of those supplies. So it was like they described it as we would gorge on the maple syrup for almost a full moon cycle and gain like 15-20 pounds. And I try to envision that, right? The communities and where they were, and what that would have been like, the joy, right? To be, I mean, every time I see people drinking the maple water or drinking the maple syrup, the full strength stuff, uh, it is the smile on the face. I mean, I've been drinking it because we have lots, right? And I also want to say, I encourage those who are in the Sioux, those who are voting at the school at Algoma. We are doing this daily. To this morning, we had an abundance of maple water. I was amazed. So if you want some maple water, please, we would love to share, because we have lots, and you know, it's all about that sharing. So I think one more question for you, Stephanie, and we'll hand it over to Vivian and Autumn for their dialogue. You shared a lot yesterday when we were preparing. I think I was most blown away just by your story of being a mother, which you've shared. Um, I think what might be really good to hear, because I know we've talked about it several times, is about just that work, the actual practical work that you're doing for on Autumn's behalf and really on behalf of our nation as an Anishinaabe. I think that what you said, you alluded to a little bit being in the background, but if you can talk to us just a little bit about the extent of what's happening right now in your life and Autumn's life, I think that would be really, I don't think people realize quite the extent of it. So please, if you could share just a little bit about that, I'd be really honored.
Okay, so our life is pretty busy. Like we kind of don't have time for a lot of things, and it's busy because, like water that doesn't stop running, Autumn's work does never stops. And I got woken up at 1:15 in the morning by my phone going off, and I usually have to turn it off because it goes off 24 hours of the day, 7 days a week. And she gets 20 to 40 requests per day. And so the email that it goes through, I'm constantly going through. I also work full time. I work full time, and I'm a crisis and trauma counselor. So I work full time during the week, during the days, and her work, it never stops. And so I'm at work and I'm trying to not look at that. I got it. So I'll take breaks, and on my lunch breaks, I'm looking at emails. I'm going, wow, holy geez. And I can't wait to get home, and I got to sit down with Autumn, and I'll be like, Autumn, we got these requests coming in, and they're requests from all over the world. China, Italy, France, South America, like Brazil recently reached out, and it's all over. It's unreal. And that work never stops. And so sometimes, that I talk about that self-care. If I don't look after myself, I'm gonna go crazy, because there's her work, there's my work, and then there's we have Sierra has epilepsy, her younger sister, and it's a lot of time that we do spend, like Autumn's her caretaker as well. And so we spend a lot of times in and out of hospital and at sick kids, and it's kind of why we moved. We had to be closer to medical care. So it's a real juggling. And when I lay down at night, I'm writing things down, making lists of things I got to do the next day. Then I go and I open the email. It's just like whoa. And I feel bad sometimes because she can't be everywhere. She could probably do 3 Zooms a day every day of the week if she wanted to, but she doesn't want to. She's a young woman, and it's my job to make sure she stays a teenager in her role right now, and she knows how to have fun, and she gets her rest. She has her autumn time, she has her family time, and she just, that alone time. And so I have a little rule where I do one silly thing a day that makes them laugh, and let's do something different. Let's go see something new or do something new. So that's my way of trying to balance our lives, our personal lives. And so it's a big job. And so we can't get to everyone, and her being in school, and she's real serious about school, because she says, how does anybody think I'm going to become and help do something if I don't go to school? Like, her life is just beginning. And so she still needs to get a grade 12 education. She still needs to go to university. Like, she has to do these things. And she says, she's got all A's right now. She's trying to get somewhere in her life. So when she tells me, don't book me more than, once or twice a month, well, that's hard, because it's actually, I've been sneaking it in once or twice a week. And it made it a bit easier with the Zoom, because on my vehicle, I've only had it 3 years. I already have 250,000 kilometers on my vehicle, and that's just water work. That's just me driving. I drive her everywhere, and when we're not driving, we fly. And you know, it's a lot. Like, it's not just, you know, it's not real easy. And the thing is that I can't just get somebody to go with her because I'm her mom, and I know her, and she gets really overwhelmed sometimes because she's an energy person, and even before we get to an event, she could feel the energy, and and I'll just look at her, and make sure I know where the back door is because I need to get her out of there as soon as she's done and we're out. And so I'll go tell whoever invited us to be mindful that if she's when she's done and she's feeling a certain way, I have to take her and remove her and be on our way. And or we'll go wait for you, you know, stuff like that, because it's a lot being a mom, and I have to protect her. And so it's not an easy job. And basically, that's what I do on the side. I have a bunch of different roles.
You certainly do. I mean, just you've laid out so much just in this last 40 minutes, like your work as a mother, your work as an Anishinaabe, and then your work in managing, really, Autumn. I'm sure you probably feel like, I know you said yesterday what you want to talk about is your humanity, right? Like you're a young woman, and so much life ahead of you and so much work to do. But in managing that, it's, when you've told me that before, I'm just like, wow, as somebody who gets asked to speak pretty much a few times a month myself, like it's nothing compared to that, right? Like, and I just manage myself. Geez, I have to hire somebody, I think, to another assistant. But no, but I think that absolutely, we're all standing with you. And one of the things that you've told me is how important it is to protect you, Autumn, because of this work and how important it is and what can come. And I think, uh, thank you truly from my heart, just to see, like, wow, like it's like unbelievable what happens when you get to that place in your life. And I'm trying to imagine what's next, and it's hard because if that's what's now, imagine what's coming. So I think for all of us here, recognizing that the pressure that we have to send our prayers, to both of you and your families, and really to our whole nation, right? That what we're really doing is we're trying to restore our identity as a people, right? And I've really avoided asking anything until this moment, but here in this community, coming to this community, I felt, we need that voice of both of you, right? As an Anishinaabe, to share with this community at this time, because of the need is so great. And being, just down the highway there from Wiki, of course, Mike Bison from Wiki as well. So there's a power from that place. And I've spent a lot of years there now. I know what's there and what's coming from there. And here in Batchiwano, Bajwanang, and Garden River, and Bawating, there is a place here that's so important that we restore and rejuvenate. So I think with that, thank you, Stephanie, for that very, lucid sharing of your reality. Yeah, it blows me away, and I have so much respect for you. As you know, thank you so much for what you've shared, what you're doing. And, I raised my hands up. I lived in BC for a while. We raise our hands up for that work, right? So that you can continue to thrive, right? I want to send those prayers that you continue to thrive, that you're given everything that you need, all the support, all the love, all the beauty, so that you thrive. So thank you. And what I'd like to do now is, oh, Buju, how are you? Nice to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. It's great to see your family there. Yeah, it just fills my heart. But I think now, I'd really like to hear from you, Autumn, and I know Vivian. we would like to have this dialogue with Autumn. She wants to share about her reality, you know, as a 16-year-old girl, not sort of as what we see sometimes from the outside as that person doing so much for not just Anishinaabe people, but Canada, right? You represent Canada, but you're also 16 and you want to have fun. You want to be like a human, right? And I think that's awesome that you want to talk about that. So Vivian, please, if you want to share, and Autumn, Autumn, if you want to share a little bit now, I'd be happy to hear. Miigwech.
Yeah, so Miigwech, Maltiosh, Andrew, and Stephanie, what can I say? You're an inspiration for all moms. I think we all have to remind ourselves that, you know, we multitask on a daily basis. We have so many responsibilities on this plane and also the spiritual plane that sometimes there's so little time to take care of ourselves, and it's so foundational, right? So it's so important for us to hold each other up, to support each other, and to continue give each other inspiration and positive energy so that this work can continue, because it's so important. You know, Indigenous women across nations, across linguistic barriers, we are the backbone of society. We've always been the foundation for bringing forth life, for continuing you know, passing on these very important roles and responsibilities and the knowledges to our children, to our community. And so I'm so inspired and honored to be in your presence. And Autumn, so having said all of that, which is a huge weight of the world, right? It's kind of like, well, what do you do as a teenager having all of these amazing you know, forums in which to speak, but also how do you find the time to be your 16-year-old self? What do you like to do? How do you decompress and take care as a teenager? I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. My daughter was asking me, she's like, so does she work all the time? Is she always like writing speeches and always attending these serious events? Or, you know, is there any fun way to learn? So those are my daughters. Like, I'd love to hear some of that, please. Miigwech.
Well, usually when I'm not like, of course I'm not doing this all the time, as my mom mentioned. We try to keep it as kind of as balanced as possible. But I'm I have a few things that I like to do that are my favorite things. I love baking. My grandma, my mom mentioned her as she was one of our mentors. She was known as a really good baker, and so from a young age, she taught me how to bake. So one of my favorite things is to bake. And I'm with my sister all day because we're currently online school because of COVID. So I'm with my sister every day. And actually, my favorite music is to listen to Spanish music. And we're constantly studying, listening to Spanish music at the same time all day. And my downtime is really hanging out with friends and watching crime shows, homicide documentaries. Those are also my favorite. So those are some of the things I like to do on my spare time.
Yeah, so you know, again, right? Like it's a lot of pressure for somebody who is 16, and I'm just wondering. You were talking earlier about how, you know, at the tender age of 8, you learned what a boiling water advisory was, and then you started to make connections as you started digging deeper in terms of, you know, who has access to clean water, not just here but across the region and then across the world, right? Then you started to make connections as to, you know, the conditions that have been sort of created that have led Indigenous peoples across the globe again to not have access to clean resources and to clean water. Like, how did that make you feel? How did you manage such a heavy realization at such a tender age? Like, how did you go about that?
Well, that is definitely a lot for kind of me to, at such a young age, of course, at 8 years old, to comprehend almost. Because for me, I grew up in an area where I was able to just go to my tap, turn on the water and drink it, wash my hands with it, or use it for showering, cleaning myself. But when I went to the bathroom and we had to use hand sanitizer, and like that almost felt like it wasn't enough like sanitization to clean myself. So I guess that was a part of like me realizing that these people in this community have to do this every day, and they're dependent on bottled water. So that includes cleaning your babies, feeding your family, cleaning your home, washing yourself with bottled water. And for me, that was something a lot for me to take in, because I couldn't even imagine having to live off bottled water. And it hurt me to think, like, when I walked out and I asked my mom all of that, I started to look around and think that there was kids that were my age and younger that had no idea what it's like to do the things that I'm used to doing. And so I don't know why, like, it really did affect me. And I know I was only 8 years old, but something about it just really, like, kind of like pushed me to, like, want to advocate, want to say something, want to do something about it. And I guess it was also part of already seeing my Auntie Josephine doing it. Like, I already had the understanding, a little bit of an understanding behind it. And just as I got older, the more I started to learn about it, the message and the issue started to become more clear to me. And so, yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, and as your mom was saying, right? As women, when we have a spirit choose us as their mother, you know, the spirit is already starting to feel and to hear and to listen in to everything that we're doing, right? And so all of that blood memory, right? All of that knowledge that was passed on to you by your maternal matriarch line, and also what you were listening in the womb, you know, such important messages that, again, you realize is at such a young age, right? I'm wondering if young girls or if your peers often ask you about, you know, what it takes to speak up, because I know my daughter, you know, she's been listening to these conversations about, you know, violence against Indigenous women, colonization and the impacts and stuff since she was in the womb. But she asks, she's like, Mom, how do you get the courage, right, to stand up and to speak up? It's not easy, right? And again, being so young and having to deal with these very very heavy topics, really, right? Can you sort of maybe talk a little bit about what you do or what you say to young people or your peers when they ask you about that?
Yeah. Well, I'd probably like to start off by saying it is really difficult being at a young age and trying to get the courage to stand up. It is really hard, because ever since I wrote my first speech, all the negative like feedback that you get is actually really surprising, especially for someone who's young or trying to do something good. It's hard. It is really hard, and I never understood why there's people like that, but it's something that I've just kind of like adapted to. It's not even about what they have to say, it's about my message. And for me to stand up and actually use my voice and raise my voice was realizing that there wasn't very many people speaking about these Indigenous issues in Canada. And I was kind of already raised around people that were like public speakers, because my grandpa, I always see him speaking in schools to younger children. He was a native language teacher, and he was always sharing. He brought me to some of his classes that he shared. But I was always seeing my elders and aunties and uncles sharing around people. So it was something that I already kind of seen. I had a lot of mentors mentoring me in that kind of path. But to stand up on my own and like bring forth my own message was difficult. But I always have to remember why I'm doing this and who I'm doing it for. This work isn't for myself. It's not for fame or for a million followers. It's for my people, because the Indigenous people in Canada are so oppressed. For hundreds of years, we've been so oppressed. Racism, environmental racism, systemic racism. Like I said, residential schools, the Indian Act, loss of culture, everything. I still see racism to this day in my own school system. When I first moved to Ottawa about 2 years ago, I got to school. People asked me, what's your ethnicity? And I told them First Nations. And they said, oh, well, are your parents drug addicts? Are you poor? Do you live in a teepee? Are you alcoholics? And this is like when I talk about why I do it and having the courage is really emotional for me, because it did take me a lot to get to where I am today. And bullying, a lot of bullying comes along with it because you do stand out. You're looked at as not the same as everybody else. And there was a point where my mom had to pull me out of school at like the age of 12. And I was put into counseling, everything, because I was at 12 years old, no child should have to be thinking about taking their own life because of what other people think. And this is really emotional for me. So it's just me and my mom have always been doing this together. And she's the one, like she mentioned, she's a crisis and trauma counselor. She's always been there helping me. And yeah, like it's hard, but I'm still doing it. And my Aunt Josephine's words are always with me, what she said to me. And yeah, it's just really remembering why you're doing it. And it's not for myself, it's not for fame, it's for my people. And like I mentioned, I'm standing up because I'm not only a water advocate, I stand up for the missing and murdered Indigenous women, racism against Indigenous people in Canada, because these are all issues that aren't talked about. These are all issues that are just swept under the carpet. And yeah, so that's part of how I get the courage, I guess, yeah.
Oh, lots of love, Autumn. There's also a lot of messages of love to send to you. There's a lot of people behind you, and Stephanie, for you as well, because I know how much energy it takes to do this work. And then also be well yourself to pass on that energy and support and love to your child so that she can continue on. So miigwech to you both, and miigwech for sharing that very real, history and stories about the daily acts of racism that Indigenous people, especially those of us who stand up, have to contend with. It's so important to take care of your spirit, of each other. And it sounds to me that, all of that, again, the blood memory, the teachings, the role models that you had in your life, the community support, so foundational to continue just, supporting more young people like yourself so that you're not the only one, right? What kind of message would you have for educators and to community so that we can continue supporting the work that you do, but also perhaps create a path so that we can mentor and make space for young people, right, who want to do the same kind of work? What kind of message would you have?
Well, for the older generation, I feel like my message is always the same. It's really just mentoring the youth and including them, because the younger generation have a really strong message. And that's what I've learned since I started doing my work. I started to see a lot more youth advocacy, and generations like my generation, Generation Z, is actually known as like the most, I forget how they worded it, like the most powerful, like the ones making the most change. It was the ones making the most change. And I think that has a really big message behind it, because when the youth start to speak up, that's when you're doing something wrong, or something is really wrong, because children should not have to be speaking up. We shouldn't have to be speaking up on political issues, government issues. That shouldn't even be that shouldn't be a part of our worries. We should be doing things like just watching crime documentaries or baking and having fun with friends and family. But you see youth now speaking up about political issues or things that are wrong with our environment or our society. And that's why I feel like the youth have such a strong message, and that's why we need to include them. And also, that's everything I've seen, like working with other youth through my work. I see that everyone has such a strong message. And it's like, as a young person, it's almost looked as if what we have to say doesn't matter. But if we have adults that are willing to support what we have to say, that's when you'll start to see a lot more different, like, good things happening and changing, as this is our future, and like the decisions that adults make today are going to affect our future or our grandchildren's future. So I think just like, including the youth, mentoring them and encouraging them to use their voices and stand up and have the courage to speak up and share their messages or opinions or questions. That's my answer to that.
Oh, Timmy Wedge, thank you, Maltiosh. There's a lot of other messages here in the chat, and I'd just like to take the time to read them. You're amazing, Autumn. This is from Chelsea Brunel. As a 20-year-old Anishinaabe Kwe, I aspire to do the work you do already at a young age and relate to you as a person. Thank you for sharing your truth. Deb Woodman, another faculty member, says, thank you for your trust, for trusting us with your story. I value these words. And yes, thank you so much for trusting us in this forum to share these stories, these such, such deep and personal stories that we're sharing. Mina says, you're amazing and strong. So many stand with you in your journey. Much gratitude and love. You inspire us to speak up and take action for change. And that is so important. Rick Kitchen says, Stephanie and Greta are the most influential water protectors at this time. And you are, and it's really interesting because, I talked to my daughter's teacher, and they talk about these issues in their grade 6 class, right? Which is really awesome to start having those conversations in grade 6. And you have Camp Greta and Camp Autumn, right? And you've been one of those leaders that people have been talking about. And of course, also your auntie, Josephine Mandamin. So I'm going to read one more. This is from Kevin. The global climate actions are driven by youth and women. The wave of the future is driven by the divine feminine. And Eva says, Walaliek from Mi'kma'ki. Thank you for sharing your stories, teachings about ceremonies and everything. Love and gratitude. So lots of love going your way. But of course, I think that you're right. As adults, we should be taking the steps to ensure that, the youth are engaging and learning and observing, right, what we're doing, but not take up the whole responsibility, right? I think that it is sort of a wake-up call for all of us to understand that we are part of this one community, and that we need to continue weaving those threads to make that fabric, just like my my top here, really strong, so it lasts a long time, right? And again, I see the community here in Bawating and surrounding areas as a community that is actually demonstrating that strength and really trying to bring, people together across generations, which is traditionally what, Indigenous peoples from many nations, including my own, used to do, right? Sit around the fire and talk about things, maybe not such a serious way, but through jokes, right? There's a lot of light storytelling, but always with a message, right? But it, through jokes and taking ourselves seriously, but not taking ourselves seriously, right? And breaking the ice in that way, so that we can continue sort of also keeping healthy in our minds and spirits. So do you have any favorite jokes?
Well, I'm not sure. Me and my sister are always making fun of my mom doing different things, but I don't have any specific jokes. It really just comes to mind whenever.
Stephanie.
They make lots of videos of me.
That seems to be a theme. I don't know. Your kids recording you and then using that. So yeah, and it's a good mirror, right? And a good laugh, definitely. Wedge for that. I'm just going to check in with the time here. So it's 2:29. I guess, do we have more time to continue the conversation, Andrew?
I think we'll let the dialogue flow a little bit more. Perhaps invite some questions, and before we get a flood of messages in the chat box, I just want to remind everybody that Autumn is 16, and while there's a lot of adults here, and there's some youth, which is great to see, to really be mindful of your questions to Autumn and Stephanie, that this is hard, like big work, and not to overwhelm with some, crazy question that you might have that has been on your mind. This is not the forum for that. But if you have, really practical questions and, not to discourage questions, but to ask questions that are, very kind. Remember that it is up to us to take care of Autumn and Stephanie and protect them. I think that sometimes, just in my own experience doing public speaking, when people are open to the spirit that comes through our Anishinaabe teachings, I get a flood of people coming up to me, and it can be very overwhelming. And Stephanie, you and I have talked about that with Autumn and how important it is to, insulate you, Autumn, from some of that energy that I think adults, we look for sometimes a savior, and instead of taking our own responsibilities for what it is that we need to do. So maybe we can transition a little bit. If there are questions, please maybe use the icon to raise your hand, and we'll try to get some kind of order. We'll spend about 15 minutes and we're going to stop there after that and have a nice closing, being respectful of your time, Stephanie and Autumn, so that you can go out and have some fun and maybe bake some cookies or something. You can send me a couple in the mail, and if they're hard as rock when they get here, that's okay. I'll hopefully there's some icing on top, and I'll just eat that. But yeah, it's so awesome to hear your words. I don't see any questions yet or hands up, but a message from Anne Chimigwich for sharing these stories. Very grateful for everyone who created this opportunity to learn and support Autumn and Stephanie, both amazing, strong, resilient, guiding an important path for my daughters and myself to follow. Much love and light to you. And I see Corinna.
Yeah, I have to lower the hand, unmute. Chimigwech, Autumn, Stephanie, thank you so much for that. I will be super brief. I'm a student at Algoma University, and your story speaks to me in so many ways. My question to you is about the fact that you needed to, and I completely understand the need to seek out support after so much pressure and so much work that you have to do. You have to carry that. And Stephanie as well, Miigwech, for all the work that you do. My question is, with a biomedical Western settler-dominated model of healthcare, even when you have to move to be closer to it, and there's so much missing, and there's so much insensitivity in that. How can that be changed, or perhaps how is that something that you wrestle with? Because certainly it should not be accepted as enough. So there is a gap there, and I was wondering, what do both of you do when it comes to that, with being your indigenous true selves, with culture and ceremony, but also having to seek and somehow gain help with the models that are out there today?
Well, I think as a parent and as a woman, just like, spirits, they live in two realms. They have the ability to be in two realms. So they can be in the physical realm and they can be in the spiritual realm. And for me, I do need to be in the bush sometimes. At least once a week, I go out to the bush, and there's all kinds of places to go hiking around here. And so we make adventures, and we go out and we plan it, and just to go be on the land, or just to go sit by the water. And so that's what we will do. And we need to do that because, when you're surrounded by concrete, you really need to feel Mother Earth under your feet. And that's one way that we ground ourselves. And, and social distancing and being in a bubble helps a lot, because, we're pretty close knit, and it's just us, and we make a lot of fun things. Like today we're gonna bake a bunch of cookies when we're done. That's our big plan.
Well, it's for me, balancing with my, I personally have my teachings, and I'm always reflecting on those in times where I need to find myself, or kind of spiritually heal, I guess. And it's really just connecting with who I am and my culture and just being surrounded by family and my sister, because it's just me, my mom, and my sister. And it's yeah, just being with them is also really healing, especially in a hard time or an overwhelming time when something happens, or in a time where someone's trying to stop the work I'm doing, or negative feedback from anything. It's just being with my family and being connected to my culture is very healing, rather than yeah, it's just that's what I do for my personal healing.
Thank you, and Stephanie. Thank you, Corinna, for that question. There is another question here, and I think it's important, from Susan Taylor. Hi, Stephanie. Hello. How can I, as a woman, help you support Autumn and your work? Is there things, Stephanie, that public and those who really stand with you can do to support this?
Well, in terms of I'm not really like I have a lot of support from Anishinabek Nation. So when the requests are coming in, I'll usually forward them over to Rhonda, and she's the policy analyst there, and her and I are pretty close. And the ladies, Laura, like all the ladies at Anishinabek Nation are, we're in contact all the time. It's not just a Monday to Friday contact. And I usually, if there's something I don't know, or if there's a bunch of requests, I'll forward them to them, and they'll review them, and they'll help me respond. So I do have support in that way. And I don't think if I didn't have them helping me that I could probably manage it all, because it can get quite chaotic. And then at the same time, just learning to turn off the computer, turn the phone off, and I'll do that. I need to know what boundaries and limits I have. And it's just nice to know that there are, we have community support as well. And so if we visit a community, it's nice when they're looking after us and looking after Autumn especially. And so there's not much that we have to do. It's kind of like we prepare, we try to understand the community needs and what the people's needs are and what they're asking, and how we can help them and how we can advocate for them, or how Autumn can use her voice to advocate for their land and water. So that's, it's all working together, and it's just knowing that I can, contact anyone or reach out to anybody, and that, the help is there.
Miigwech. That's really great that you have that support. And I think that I think we've talked about this before, like you have the support, and you kind of want to keep it in that way that it is right now, because that like expanding, if there is an expansion, like just it's more work. Like it's more work for Autumn, it's more work for you. And you're like, I really admire how you're insulating that right now, because it really could take off. I think you said Autumn has 100 and something thousand followers on Instagram. Is that right? Something like that. Like, yeah. That's just phenomenal. And I'm sure in 5 years from now, it's going to be 1 million, and who knows how many more. And I think it's great that there is that following and there's that support. I just want to, I kind of want to screen these messages. Ani Boujou, I enjoyed listening to the story. Shared, this is from Kathleen, who's a student at Algoma and Anishinaabe. So I was wondering if you might be open to talking a little bit more about the water ceremonies you've attended and the significance they have within both Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities.
With the ceremonies, I know with the water walks, a lot of the teachings are universal, and like there are some things that we can and cannot share, because a lot of it that we do is in ceremony. So it's like why we do the water ceremonies is because we're trying to honor that spirit in the water. And there's a lot of spirits that protect our water and help our water out, and so we have to honor that. And so when we're doing those ceremonies, we're giving thanks, and not just just thanks for the water. It's like, it's that lifeblood of Mother Earth, and without that lifeblood, none of us would be here. Like even a baby in the womb needs water to live and thrive. And if that water is not there anymore, that baby, it can't live, it can't survive without the water. So, you know, we have to honor that, those ceremonies, and we do different, there's different ceremonies, and we do make bundle offerings, and it could, sometimes it depends on where you are and what the bundle, like you have to respect also what the teachings are in the communities as well. Like we don't just go in there and say, this is how it has to be. And we have to respect what other elders are in the territory, and, you know, what's happening there. So, you know, we create those bundle offerings and we share those teachings and what we need to do. So that's kind of, yeah, the different things we do when we do water ceremony.
Thanks, Stephanie. Is there anything you want to add to that, Autumn?
Well, it's kind of the same knowledge, so it's like all the same stuff.
Right on. Yeah, I'm sure. One time I was asked to keep fire for what moon ceremony, and I lit the fire up, and then I left, and then they're like, "Where are you going?" Because I know that's for the women, right? And I it was, oh man, the beautiful full moon down in Fonda, New York, at Tom Porter's place. And then they said, no, you got to keep fire the whole time. And I was like, okay. And that was the first time I had experienced that. And what an incredible experience that was. And so awakening to the realities that our Anishinaabe Koi are faced with each day. So thank you for doing that work. I think we have one more question here. It was sent to me privately, but I'll try to ask it in a way that's sensitive. And it's a question that I think often comes up in these environments that we create for all of us to step into. And it's as a white or a non-Indigenous uninvited settler on this land, how can we support you in this work? And I know that's a big question, but I'm sure you've probably been asked similar questions before, but do you have a response to that?
Well, I think the public can, and the communities can create their own initiatives as well. Like they can start their own water walks, and they can, you know, learn to do their own ceremonies, and they can advocate for, you know, healthy sanitization, and, you know, they're like really looking after their environments. I think that's what they can do on that scale where they come from. And you know, going in and, you know, educating the children and doing a lot of land-based things. I think that's what's really important, because I do know we had a couple of recommendations, like put Autumn in Speakers Bureau, but, you know, I try to keep her Autumn as much as I can. And I know once we get involved in something and we start having other people involved, she's going to have to answer to other people. And, you know, she very much likes to keep, you know, keep herself very humble. And, you know, we're pretty private. Like we're not out in this community doing all kinds of things. And, you know, we just like to stay home when we get to. So, you know, if we start going down that road, then, you know, she's going to have to be answering to somebody else. And, you know, she already says, like, you know, Mom, you know, I know her, and I know what her limits are, and, you know, how she's feeling. So that's basically how I think that others can help, is to, you know, join in the cause and start speaking up for the environment and the water where you are.
Miigwech. This is great. So I think we're gonna, sorry to the people who do have, there's a few more questions, but I think we're gonna stop there because we want to close this circle in a really good way. I do want to say that to those who are interested in continued dialogue that we'll be hosting through Shingwak, Ginamagegamic, as well as through this partnership. Oh, I said that privately. Through this partnership with SASA, Shingwak Anishinaabe Students Association, and Anishinaabe Initiatives Division at Algoma University. There is a form that I just posted in the chat box. if you would like to, we want consent and permission from you. If you want to receive emails from us and more information, we do have lots more planned. This is only the beginning. You know, you're the second of our speakers. We have land-based initiatives planned, transformations on the earth that are practical, where people can harvest from them, just like the maple water. These are real experiences that we want to, as COVID, you know, as these protocols, you know, we got to follow them right now. But as things transform, it's been amazing to see the response at our sugar bush. People, yesterday there's about 15 people out there chatting away, and it just felt so good. And just before this, Vivian and others were out. We were harvesting. Our buckets were almost full, so we're actually overflowing with the maple water. So they're happy. They're sharing with us. And what I'd like to do now is we're going to ask. I think, I'm not sure the order. I think we're going to ask Tasha to come in now, and then we'll pass on to Chief Sayers to close this circle for us. He opened us in a really good way. But Tasha, are you here?
I am on.
Yay, Tasha, Ani. So I'm going to pass it over to you. You are a great speaker and you're awesome. So you know what to say. Miigwech for being here.
Miigwech. Miigwech for inviting me to have this, to share a song. I'll be sharing a song for Autumn and for Stephanie. And I don't know what the protocol is, and I don't know if it's okay if we can stop the recording at this point, if that's okay. I hate to ask, but at the same time, it is a ceremony song that I'd like to gift to her from our lodge.
The recording right now. Miigwech Tasha for
Miigwech.
Miigwech Tasha. Miigwech Nibua. I know Tasha, you're doing a water walk soon. So maybe you can just mention that. And I don't know if you have a link to plug so people can support what you're doing here in the local area. Maybe just take a couple minutes here.
If anyone is interested in being a core walker, just give me a private message, and we're trying to involve the Anishinaabe people from the nations, and in addition to the youth. We have a youth logo contest kind of happening right now, and everyone who participates in submitting their artwork between the ages of 5 and 29 will receive a small gift. So it's about holding up our youth, this walk too. So Miigwech for this time, and I hope to hear from some of you. 135 kilometers, 4 days, that's what we're aiming for. So if you want to take part and lift that water for your ancestral territories, do just inbox me through our Facebook site. Nahau Miigwech.
Now, Miigwech Tasha, thank you for sharing that. And we are going to try and finish on time here, but we do want to give Chief Sayers of the Bachuan First Nation his opportunity to close this circle in a good way. He opened us with our maple water ceremony last week. It was quite beautiful. Thank you, Chief, for all the work that you're doing. Thank you to Angela and Vivian and Autumn and Stephanie and everybody who came out today to experience this. That song, Tasha, I was having chills. I'm missing the lodge, and they're just going through my body, and I feel so good about today, like to see everybody here and supportive. And I know that this is going to have a resonating impact, and because all you women are so powerful. And thank you for teaching me. Thank you for being part of my life and the lives that you guys have continued to influence. Miigwech, Chief.
Miigwech, Andrew. Miigwech, Tasha, and Autumn and Stephanie. I really appreciate all of those efforts, and it's really wonderful to be a part of this today. And I really believe strongly that everybody that's on here, it's not an accident. I think it's intentional. It's part of our journey. And I really appreciated the song. That was really beautiful, and I can see our ancestors looking down here and smiling and really happy with the work that's happening, including Josephine Ba. and some of those other wonderful, beautiful teachers that we've all been able to have exposure to and share and enjoy their company while they were in this world. So I really appreciate that. And I wanted to say thank you, Stephanie, for those measures that you're taking around self-preservation. That's really good to hear. We need to have you guys a part of the work, and I'm looking forward to seeing that happen in the future as we walk in this world that we have to do our time here. And that I think all of creation is in a better place because of your work. So miigwech and miigwech gijam miigwech mishom sanana miigwech nakom sanana. Thank you to our grandfathers and grandmothers and all of our ancestors and the Creator for helping us make this day possible and for blessing us today. Miigwech, 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 miigwech. Bama pi goabmen.
Okay, miigwech. Chief, miigwech to everybody. Thank you guys so much for being part of this day. Please, I'll post this again really quickly, copy that, or check out that link. And we don't want to just send emails to anybody through Eventbrite. If you joined us, we want to get your permission and consent. But we do have lots. The next moon cycle, we're preparing sky teachings, star teachings. And we're going to continue to collect sap right up until the 16th. We may go beyond that now that we see how the season is going. We've already got about 13 liters of maple syrup to share with our elders and our community leaders whenever they join us. The next thing will be starting to amend the soil, starting to prepare those seeds. That's what I'm doing right now, just starting to think about that. And that's another huge, beautiful work that's going to happen. We're going to have more conversations about practical things that each one of us can participate in and do, rather than just listen to these leaders that come, but actually do this work. We all need to play a role in this. It's not the responsibility of our young women. It's or older women or grandmothers, grandfathers, all our work. And when the community comes together and does that work together, that's when the real transformations start to happen. That's when the paradigm starts to shift. And it is shifting now. It's evident in what we see, the changes to our hearts and our minds and our wills. So I'm seeing it. It's incredible to be alive at this time in this space. So miigwech, thank you so much. Angela, did you want to add one more thing or anything?
No, I just want to say miigwech to you, Dr. Judge, for supporting this and leading this huge initiative. And thank you to Wiikwemkoong, as well as my colleagues and all of you for attending here today, because by you being here today shows us that this is important, and we hope that you then go to your communities and continue to share the discussion. So miigwech.